And we talk shit all the time, Holly. It's really no different.
We do talk shit a lot.
Yeah. We getting started?
Let's do it.
Howdy, howdy, team. We're going to call this Small Goods, Big Chats. It's Holly and Joel. We're having fun. And Holly's finally had a second to breathe some air. So we're going to roundtable about a few things today. But the general start or the frame of this conversation is going to be looking at pain, looking at performance, and kind of considering or bridging, I guess, like those two sides of things, right?
Yeah, bringing them both together.
Yeah. So like, let's just start at the start, Holly. Like, someone comes to you in pain. Like, how you dealing with that conversation? What are you asking? What are you thinking? What kind of answers are you looking for?
I like to start with people with just having a conversation. I think you can get majority of the picture by chatting, getting a history, what's wrong, when, where, kind of like a week by week, a year to year, how long it's been there. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get more specific. I walk in, I say, oh fuck, like something's feeling weird in my hip. It's been a little bit uncomfortable the last couple of weeks. Like, if there's like one question or like one piece of information you want first, like, what is it?
Well, what I look for is as soon as someone comes to me in pain, I need to create a hypothesis in my brain of what it is. So I need to ask questions. Is it a joint problem? Is it tendons? Is it muscle? Is it bone? Is it, what structure is it causing the pain? So that's kind of where all my questioning goes to. So other things is like, I don't know, like tendons is like warm-up effects, and does it hurt with certain movements? Yeah. And then there's lots of different things you can ask depending on what body part it is. So it's very specific to that body part.
Yeah, cool. I like it. I mean, just to give you like a counterpoint, one thing I really like trying to figure out or ascertain very quickly when someone comes to me and they're in pain is I like to try and figure out what their feeling about the pain is first. Like, the way I like to think about it is, especially in the online space, I think you have people who are very much biomechanists, and you've got people who are very much pain science, and it feels like there aren't that many that are in the middle. So like, why don't we just acknowledge there's probably truth in both sides? And for me, I kind of think, well, affect is going to tell me a few things. From like a pain science standpoint, I'm going to see how a person feels about their situation, which is a huge determinant in whether they can get better and how quickly they can get better. But if they are willing to try more things, then I have more tools on the table. Or if they're super sheepish, then even biomechanically, I just can't do as many things because they're not going to say yes to as much. So I don't know, that's a fun kind of way that I think about things. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I like the whole biopsychosocial model. So it kind of takes bio, psycho, and social. So biologically, what's happening in the body. So that structures what I was talking about before. Psycho is, like you were saying, the person's mindset. It's got a big influence on pain and how people feel pain, and kind of their anxieties and fears around the pain can sometimes make it worse. And then social as well. So this is pretty much everything else that goes on in a person's life. The support they have around them, work, everything like that.
Yeah, it's super fun. I mean, I remember reading like a study a little while back that was kind of comparing lots of different risk factors, more from like the pain science standpoint of like, well, what's the magnitude of an effect that insert whatever you like can cause for a person. And it's amazing how much affect and smoking stand out as like the two biggest potential causes and continuers of pain. So it's just an interesting thing to think about. But I guess for the people at home, you've talked briefly about like bio, psycho, and social. Could you just maybe give us like a really short list of like 3 or 4 of each of these things so people can be a little bit more mindful of like, okay, what is a biological potential cause of pain? What is a psychological potential cause? And what is the social or contextual cause of pain? Like if you could give a few of those examples each, that would be really helpful, I think, for people that haven't heard this stuff before.
So biological, man, there's so many things that can cause pain. One is overload, if you're doing too much. You're doing way too much over a long period of time. Your body's really good at adapting. But if you keep hitting these limits over what your body can recover from and do, eventually something's going to break down. You see this a lot with like tendinopathies, say. Tendinopathies are pretty much just overuse issue. So you're doing too much, and you got to pull back a little bit.
What about psychological?
Psychological. I think fear is a big one. Fear and anxiety about movement. So back pain, say. A lot of people, when they have back pain, they get scared, they get anxious, they stop moving their back. You see people and they just want to keep their back straight no matter what they do. And this fear causes you to move or not move at all. And then you just get scared to do everything. And then from that, you don't actually load your back gets deconditioned, and then it just gets weaker, and then it's more susceptible to injury. But yeah, I think fear, anxiety around movement and around having pain. Like people are scared of pain, where pain isn't actually a bad thing. It's a really, really good thing. Pain is
I feel like
a
it's
safety mechanism.
Yeah, I feel like it's just kind of your body giving you some source of information.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the news. Like pain sometimes is very useful information. Like I'm going to avoid the freeway. I don't want to spend the extra 20 minutes on that today. But sometimes it's like fake news, and we don't want fake news more than we can avoid. But our body sometimes isn't the best news source, if you like. So sometimes very helpful, sometimes not so helpful. I guess going back to like psychological principles, like if someone is in fear or they're anxious, like as you know, someone who's trying to help people, like what do you do to overcome like a psychological barrier like that? Is there like something that a physio would regularly turn to in that environment?
It's really, really person dependent. Like what movements are causing fear. Okay, let's break down that movement into the simplest form. So say someone's really scared of deadlifting or doing something. They're scared to flex and extend their spine, mostly flexion with people who want to keep their back straight. So it's like, how do we give you exercises that are really, really basic that will teach you that flexion's okay? So like child pose. That's such an easy way to just bring a little bit of flexion, and it's kind of like you need to start really low and kind of prove to yourself that, hey, I did that and it didn't cause pain. And then you go, okay, cool, you've done that. All right, let's move from a child pose to maybe a forward bend off a chair. Oh, cool, that didn't hurt, that felt good. All right, let's do it from standing. All right, let's do it from standing, picking up something really, really light. And then you kind of just build on it. So yeah, it's kind of like proving to yourself in a safe environment that you can do it.
Yeah,
and
cool.
then building on that.
Yeah, so you can almost like take steps towards a specific movement until people realize they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And like, what about like social or contextual factors? Like, what are a couple quick examples of that? I mean, we already talked about smoking, so we'll skip over that. But like, how can social factors cause pain?
Well, I don't know, if you're not happy with your social factors, if you're not happy at work, if you're not, I don't know, if you've got family issues to deal with, it's not something that you or me can necessarily fix, but we can have conversations around, hey, you're working 80 hours a week, like that isn't good for you? Is there any way that we can try and, I don't know, have a chat with our boss or create boundaries to overcome that a little bit more? I think education is a really, really big one, and just having a chat with people. I think people just want to be heard. If you can have a chat and then try and come up with options for them to take, because you can't do it for them, but you can help them get there. I think that's, yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. So like harping on about education and having a conversation with people a little bit. One thing I've always really struggled in the more traditional physio model is like you might be in for 15 or 20 minutes and you're out. I guess like, what do you think an ideal scenario as like a physio or someone who's educating and having a conversation with like a client would be? Like, do you like the current physio model? Would you do something differently? Like, how do you sit with that kind of more traditional in and out in 15 or 20 minutes as like a way to work with people in situations like these?
I don't love it. Obviously, I'm not yet a physio, so I haven't really
you've done your pracs and you've watched people go through this process and been enlisted in it. So I get that you haven't done it extensively, but I feel like you must still already have initial observations. Like for me, I studied teaching. I did my pracs as a teacher. My first was really, really cool. It was very pastoral care. I worked in a setting that really suited me because I could work person to person quite a lot. And I worked in quite mainstream schools where a lot of that was stripped back and it's very much curriculum focused. Let's hit KPIs. Have we done what we need to do at a bare minimum? Okay, move on. Yeah. So I guess like I'll use my example and we can come back to you, but I couldn't put myself in a teaching context because I felt like there wasn't enough personal interaction to be able to create a connection. And I don't really like working with people when I'm not connected to them and what they want and who they are. So I guess you might not have had a lot of experience, but I didn't either as a teacher, and that was enough for me to be like, okay, I don't want to take that risk.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're the same, but I'd really love to hear like, what would you do differently? Like if it is 15 and you like 15, why? And if not, like, what's the ideal scenario look like as a physio trying to create an environment where people can go from pain to performance?
I definitely am not a fan of these 15-minute appointments. You can't do a lot in 15 minutes. I think it depends on the person. So chronic pain is definitely ones that you need to spend more time. You need TLC, you need more education, and that's not going to happen through one appointment. Personally, what I'd like to see in physio is a little bit more of a connection and these people need to be touching base a lot. So I want to create support for them, however that looks. I don't know, WhatsApp, email, check in a lot more. And you definitely need longer appointments, yes. But I feel like if you're in a gym space and you see them all the time, you can check in with them more.
Wait, are you saying that Small Goods is the perfect physio environment as well as performance environment? Is that what you're getting at?
Maybe.
We're not plugging, we're not. No, that's cool. I think that's really interesting. So we've talked about this biopsychosocial model. We've talked a little bit about why the current setup of physio sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, based on that kind of model. I guess that's all very fun and well, but like, why did you decide to become like, what attracted you to physiotherapy, and where did this kind of interest come from?
Well, I always thought physio was really cool. I never believed I could do it. Never thought I was smart enough to do it. But I did a year of sports science after school. And that would have, if I continued with it, I would have been an ex-phys. And I just kind of did the first year, and I was like, this is not great. Like, it's very basic stuff. I was like, I don't know if I want to be an ex-phys.
Hold up, you don't like ex-physios?
I love ex-physios, but not all of them. There was limitations to being an ex-phys. And I was like, an ex-phys is a physio that can't diagnose. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that. Like, me in my life, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So I was like, may as well try and apply for physio, and then that way I can do more, be more.
So what you're hearing if you're watching right now is that ex-physios are really nothing, and that's why Holly wanted to be a physio. Is that correct?
Yeah. But if you're an ex-phys, I still love you.
No, all jokes aside, there are a lot of ex-physios who do a great job.
No, they're great. But I was just like, I may as well apply for it. I applied and I got in, and it was pretty crazy. I got injured a lot when I started lifting. I had a lot of aches and pains, and I remember having a PT who, at the time, I thought knew a lot about injury. Looking back, didn't really know a lot, but that triggered me because I was like, wow, I want to be more than just someone who can teach an exercise. Like, I want to help people in a greater scheme. And there's so many people out there who have pain. Like, I have pain, I have injuries, and I want answers for people. Like, I wanted answers for myself. So I was like, cool. I don't want to
be a coach. I don't want to be an ex-phys. I don't want to be any of that shit. I can only be a physio because that's really the only way I can solve the world's problems.
Well, that's what I thought at the time, yeah.
Yeah, nice. I like it.
That's what I thought at the time. I really wanted to help people, and I wanted a job that was active and in the gym because I absolutely love the gym. And I was just looking at degrees, and I thought, oh, physio, that sounds pretty cool. So I decided to do it, and here I am, a few months from graduating.
That's so exciting. You've been doing this now for, what, 2.5 years?
This is my 4th year.
Yeah, you did your first year of sports science. You kind of made the change. I know that a lot of the units are cross-transferable or whatever.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not physio.
Never mind then. So we've been doing it for nearly 4 years.
Well, this is my 5th year if you count that year.
Yeah, cool. No, that's very fun. I guess like what I'd ask is everyone has a perception looking outside in at physios about what physio is really about. How accurate do you think a person's understanding or feeling about being a physio is? And is there anything that like you were really surprised by or like took you by a little bit of surprise, I guess, in making that change and becoming a physio as you've studied over these last few years?
I think physios can get a bad rap because there's a lot of shit physios out there, and I do agree with that. Doing the degree, you learn a lot, but it's really hard to understand what you learn without doing it. So you graduate with a lot of knowledge that you learned 3 years ago that you haven't really put to use. So when you graduate, you learn so much on the job. And I think if you're not ready to learn and continually learn, because it's going to take a long time for you to be really good at what you do, you're going to struggle. So that's kind of a big thing is like, yeah, you're not going to know it all. But if you're willing to revise and study and learn from people and do that, then you'll be a great physio.
Yeah, right.
I feel like there's also a lot of bullshit in physio. There is so much bullshit. And like what a physio did 10 years ago, like is going to be so different to what I do now or in 10 years. There's always new research, and a physio is a constant growth. Like the treatments, this and that, like they'll always, so you've got to keep on top of it as you go. That's
really cool. I mean, it actually segues really well into the next question I wanted to ask, which is you said there are a lot of shit physios out there. Like one, how do you detect a shit physio and get rid of them if you need to? And two, like on the other hand, like how do I find a really good one? Like what would I have to do?
I feel like,
let's start with shit physios.
Okay, shit physios. If a physio tells you to stop doing things, or you won't ever be able to squat again, you won't ever be able to do this again, or if their remedy is rest and stuff like steroid injection. Like it has its time and place, but I feel like if they go straight into, okay, you need to stop lifting, you need to do nothing, and you need to go get steroid injections. Bye. Like, one thing I've learned from physio is rest is never the option. There's always something that you can do. It's just you've got to modify it to what the person in front of you can and can't do. So if a physio listens to you and your problems and does something about them, then they're a great physio. I don't know. It's really hard to tell a good physio, but I don't know. If they're willing to listen and they like really try to give you exercises that you can do around your injury, then I think they're off to a great start.
Okay.
And they're willing to learn, because that's another thing. So because you go see a physio, you think about the whole body. There is so many things that could go wrong in the body, or like pains and stuff. And we're not going to know everything all the time. But if someone comes to me or a different physio and they're willing to learn and find the information and be like, okay, cool, like I know roughly what to do now, I'm going to get you to do this, and they're willing to then go research and learn, and then when you come back the next time, be like, cool, yeah, we're doing this, this, and this. Like I've, done the research. Then I think they're a pretty good physio.
Yeah, cool. I like it. I mean, the way that I kind of think about this, because I have people ask me this question every so often when there's a bump or a niggle that we have in the gym that I don't feel comfortable answering on behalf of a, qualified professional for. I guess a few things I kind of say is, one, I'd like them to have experienced roughly the thing that you've experienced. Like if you're a weightlifter, I much prefer a physio that has weightlifted, and there aren't that many, so it's a bit of a difficult thing. Same with a powerlifter. I'd like you to go see a physio that actually sees powerlifters regularly. I think so. Experience is one. I think two, the ability to continue learning is very important, and that means maybe not just reading up on recent literature, but going to workshops and being engaged within the physio space and community, as you say. I think there's a lot of people out there, and if you were qualified 10 years ago, 20 years ago, there are a lot of things that have changed. So I really like people that seem active and interested in what they do. If they're experienced, they're active, and they take a roughly scientific lens as a place to start with things. I think that's super important. I think that there are people that can be way too mechanistic. I think there are people that can be way too blasé. I think it's nice to have someone who has experienced and has science and has both of those tools at their disposal. Do you think there's anything I missed in that list?
No, I like the experience one. I didn't really think about that, but that definitely. I think also if someone
cares as well, actually, that's got to be on the list as well. If someone doesn't care about you and actually wants to see you better, you can almost forget about it, I think.
Yeah. I know a lot of physios as well just do a lot of manual therapy, and I think you need a mix of manual therapy as well as exercise, combination of the both. If you're going to a physio and they're just massaging you, I'm sorry, but they have no fucking clue what's wrong with you, and they just are massaging you because they're just like, what the fuck?
Cool, I like it. Cool, so we've learned a little bit more about like why you like physio, what your journey was. I guess what I would ask now is like, are there any injuries that have really stood out to you as like either with you or your clients that you found really hard to initially get a grasp on or work through? And like, what's the process of solving a problem? If I want to try and sort things out for myself, I know that there are, licensed professionals, and we should definitely go and see them. But like, if there's like a rough problem solving schema or roadmap, how do I solve problems when they arise? Like, what would you say to someone who's like, I want to try and fix this myself if I can? Is there like some easy roadmap we can start with?
I think if there was an easy roadmap, it'd be out there. It's really hard, and I think it depends on so many different factors. But you definitely have like your things that you look at when people come into you. So like you need to look at range of motion, you need to look at strength, you need to look at what factors aggravate someone or ease their pain. I like to start, if I have someone, they come in, you just need to first like have a conversation. And that's kind of where you just get pieces of information, and then you kind of can tell from what they're saying if it's like a joint issue or a muscle issue or this issue. And then I like to look at like range of motion, strength, and like how they move, because I feel like that tells you a lot about someone. And like, yeah, their past history. I think it's really hard to create a...
No, I think this is great. You said range, you said load, you said like what kind of structure might be involved, and there are probably some pretty easy clues doing some very brief research on the internet. I think those are really cool places to start.
Also just like what their activity is, because I think a lot of pain can just come down from like you're just doing too much, like load,
or not enough sometimes, right?
Like what they're doing, like load management or how they move. I don't know. Some people, like I've had a client come in who he's got a really bad hip shift, but that comes from like his past history. He had a total knee replacement and then didn't rehab it properly, and then his body's just kind of adapted a new way to move because his knee won't work properly. So
no, that's fair.
There's lots of different factors, and I think you need to look at the issue. So say it's the knee. So my knee hurts. Okay, cool. Why does your knee hurt? Range of motion, strength. But then you've also got to look at the ankle. You've got to look at the hip. What's happening there, and is that contributing to that?
Yeah, which obviously with your client, you were saying there's a hip shift. So there's something going on at the hip. It could affect the knee and vice versa, right?
100%. So I think you've got to look at not just the area that's sore as well. You've really got to just look at the whole person.
No, that's cool. I really like it. I mean, like just as a point of difference or a talking point here, I guess one thing I like to bring to the members of Small Goods when they come to me with an issue, as a way to think about things a little bit more broadly, is we talk about chronic and acute, and then we talk about load and recovery. So it's kind of a matrix. Imagine you've got a little square here. You've got chronic and acute, and then you've got load and recovery. So what does acute recovery look like? Did you sleep well last night? Have you eaten well in the last 2 days? How's your hydration? Are you eating a roughly well-rounded diet? These kinds of things in the short term can affect performance and recovery. So I like to look at that and I say, well, that's the acute situation in terms of recovery. What about chronically? Have we done many very demanding programs back to back?
Yeah.
Are we giving you adequate light weeks at the start of a program to make sure that you've recovered from the fatigue that you've accumulated? It may not be that this day or this week's the problem. It might actually be that 3 or 4 really hefty programs back to back with not enough rest in the light weeks of the program have contributed to a problem here. So I like to think about acute and chronic recovery in that way. And I think on the opposite side, it's load. So, acutely loading, like, did we do a really hefty exercise? Was it a single rep? Did you headbutt the wall at full speed when you were running the other day? These are like acute loads. That's something that's happened in a moment or in a session. And then we've got like chronic load. So like what's the stress of a program, and are we able to tolerate the demands of stress? How does that sound as kind of like a good way to start a conversation with someone? Would you do something different to that?
No, I like that. I like that. And I think it also plays into like acute versus chronic pain. When you have acute pain, you know that you just need to just dial it down for a little bit, and then like the body's very good at kind of just getting rid of that. It's kind of like, okay, you've done something, pain, lots of pain quickly, to just be like, okay, shit, I need to chill out for a bit. You chill out, most of the time it gets better. Chronic pain is like more you needed something's not good and you need to address something for that change to happen, whether it is you're just pushing way too hard or you've got like no range of motion or strength in a certain direction or muscle. But no, I agree. I like that.
No, that's cool. And I guess like one other thing I like to use quite regularly with clients when they seem to be struggling is I like to say, like, what is the given force or the nature of force in the movements that are irritating you? And how can we maybe make assumptions based on a pattern that might emerge? You know, we've had a couple people recently who have struggled with like, you know, little niggles with their knees, for example. And it's not all the time. There are particular movements that seem fine within the gym. They might do leg extensions well, or they might do squats well. But maybe like Olympic lifting movements and derivatives of Olympic lifting are giving them a bit of grief. And I guess one thing I like to think about is like, if we're just taking this back to raw physics, like where's the most force happening in exercises and what are we asking of a given muscle or structure relative to the force we're applying on it? So whenever people come to me and they're struggling a little bit at Small Goods, I like to think, okay, well, the two most irritating factors, in my opinion, are probably speed and range. And the reason I say that is because, well, at range, muscle fibers are, you know, put in a lengthened position and they don't normally produce as much force there. So if we have to tolerate a lot of force in a lengthened position, it's normally a really easy way to break something. And that's how people tear muscles on soccer pitches and stuff like that all the time. And then it's even worse if we go range and speed because, you know, speed, if we're moving quickly under load, then mass and acceleration are put together and you're multiplying those, and that's a shitload that you're asking your body to tolerate in a given moment in time. So I really like thinking about like, well, what movements are you doing? Which are the most forceful? At what kind of length? And then is there something we can do to change the speed or the range or both? And if you all of a sudden have one of those things changed and it feels better, maybe we've come to a solution. Like, how does that sound as a bit of a scheme or a way of thinking about things?
No, I like that.
Is there anything you might add or you think maybe it's missing?
Not off the top of my head.
Cool. No, that's fair. And I guess other than that, like some really fun ways of looking and thinking about, you know, pain and the nature of pain and how we go from a place of pain to performance. I guess, you know, just as a bit of an end note, like who's Holly? Like, why do we want to work with Holly? What kind of person is she? And why would maybe she be a good physio, not a shit physio?
I think the biggest thing is that I just care. Like, I genuinely want to help people get better. Like if someone comes to me, they're like, hey, I'm in pain. I go, shit, like what can we do to get you out of pain? Like I genuinely want to help people. Because that, I don't know, helping people who have been struggling and can't find answers, and if I can find them an answer, that actually lights me up so much inside and it makes me so excited. So yeah, I think that's like my biggest drive is I just want to help people.
Nice. Are there any like people or problems that you like really enjoyed the most or like took a bit of pride in the time that you've been working at Small Goods or like on your pracs, for example?
That's a good question. I enjoy helping people that are just like willing to be helped. Like if someone comes to me and they're not willing to like put in the work, and you know, I want people to come to me. They're like, look, I've tried so hard to, you know, fix this and I can't fix it. And they genuinely like want to get better and they want a solution. They like are willing to listen to you and willing to like do the things that you're helping them with. Then I feel like if anyone's got that, then I'll be more than happy to help them.
There you go, guys. So if you're someone who is committed to learning, committed to working, and like someone that actually cares, Holly's your girl. I think I'll give her a bit of time because she still hasn't given me an example, and I can think of so many. But I'm going to talk about one that I actually got to experience in our club session last night. Lockie has been working with Holly now for what, a few months?
3-4 months.
Yeah, okay, so 3 or 4 months, and Lockie had a pretty decent patellar tendinopathy issue. Some interesting stuff in his scans, let's just say. And the initial prescription was, that
He had a tear as well.
Yeah, it was a pretty solid one. I haven't seen too many quite so gnarly before.
Yeah.
But the initial prescription was that it's going to take a year to get back to anything particularly interesting. And, we did a little bit of independent research, had a bit of look. We kind of came up with a different solution pathway, which I think we're both very happy with. But it's pretty crazy. Lockie has been doing powerlifting and weightlifting, and his previous best on the clean and jerk was, I think, 135 or 137. It's up in the 130s somewhere. Yesterday night, he managed to clean 130 kilos after being back to weightlifting for, a month and a half, 2 months. No pain, no issues, and is performing probably the best I've ever seen him. So I think that's probably one of my favorite case studies for you, Holly.
Yeah, no, he's actually done really well. I remember him saying that he's had knee pain for as long as he can remember, and I've been asking him, and he's like, "Nah, I got no pain in my knee," and he's gone back to doing full cleans, full range of motion squats, and he's like, "Nah, my knee's fine," and I'm like, "Pretty cool." He's pretty cool.
So what do you think it is about someone like Lockie that gets him from a place where he's really struggling with something to a place where not that much longer he's excelling? Like, if you want to be a good client or a good patient for a physio and maximize the use of external care, what does a good patient look like when they walk up to you and want some help? Obviously, you said very willing already. That makes sense.
You have to be patient. I think with a lot of injuries, a lot of people want to get back as soon as they can. And yes, that is the goal. You want to get back as soon as you can, but if you rush it, you're just going to go back to square one, So I think a big thing with Lockie that made his rehab so successful was he was very patient. It's like, okay, here's the level that you're at now. Let's go here. See how that goes. Oh yeah, that's good. Let's go here. And it's very, very small building blocks, and it's going to take time. And I think as well, on the back of that is communication. I'm not the patient. I don't know what they feel. I don't know how they're feeling. I don't know what's going on in their life unless they tell me. So we were communicating a lot through WhatsApp. He was sending me videos. I was always asking about his pain. And if his pain was a lot, then we go, okay, yep, that was too much. Let's pull it back a little bit. And I think another thing was just education and talking. You need to give your patient autonomy. I feel like if a patient is reliant on you, then, when you're not there, what happens? They're not going to know what to do. So if you kind of set a plan, you're like, okay, here's the rough plan. It could change. Let's communicate. Let's give you education so you know what you need to do. If A happens, do this. If B happens, do this, example with Lockie, we just did heaps and heaps of leg extension isometrics at the start to try and just build the strength up in his leg and build the tolerance in his tendon. And I kind of just had a few things that he had to do. So it was like, okay, we want pain at a minimum. I want you to kind of the next day after you do them, reflect, is my knee sore? If your knee's sore, then you've done too much. The next session, pull back a little bit. So it's kind of something that he could do on his own. So he kind of took charge of his rehab in a way. I gave him the structure, but he did it.
Yeah, and I've got to say, as someone who got to observe this third party to the conversations that these two were having, it's really interesting because a lot of people will go to a physio. The physio will say, cool, 3 sets of leg extensions twice a day, wall sits, so on and so forth. But what I noticed between these two watching them is that, Lockie might have had an issue leg extending at this kind of range, and then we adjusted to this kind of range or this kind of range. And it was the same with the wall sits. I think there's a lot of little detail that sometimes gets missed. And that's nobody's fault, right? Like in a physio setting, you've got 15 minutes. There's only so much you can do and so much follow-up communication you can expect to have when you're dealing with hundreds of patients potentially a week. But it was really cool noticing that there's a lot of nuance that's there. And if you and the person on the other side do communicate regularly and it's understood why we're doing what we're doing, some really amazing results by what most standards would be can end up being the outcome of that.
Yeah, like the leg extension is something I use for a lot of people. I just really like it. I feel like you can load it lots, but it's like, yes, I use it for everyone, but you've got to individualize it. So I've got one patient who has, or one client who has like quad tendinopathy, and then Lockie obviously had patella. So it's like, okay, how do we use this movement but change it to target what we need to? There's so many things you can change. The weight, you can change like the range that you do it, you can change the time, you can change how far the seat's back, you can change, there's so many things, so many factors you can change to make the exercises like target each individual person. So I think it's just being able to know who your patient is and change things based on what you see and what the target is, the goal, the outcome.
No, that's awesome. I really like it. I think this has been a really good chat. I think that we've got a lot of good information for people that are trying to better understand injury and how to go from a place of pain to performing a little bit better. Is there any kind of last thoughts or things you'd like to add to this conversation before we leave it here for today?
Very broad.
Well, while I give you a second to think, one thing I'll definitely say is that I've had some really nasty encounters with physios that maybe haven't been as scrupulous as I would have liked them to have been. I was told at one point I'd never squat or deadlift again. And I think I'm just really glad that there's a situation and we've got enough information out there to know that like you will get better if you want to find a way and you're willing to be patient and make some mistakes. I genuinely believe that almost everyone, if not everyone watching this, can get better. So I want you guys to know that. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Holly?
There's always a way. And I think that's something you and me will always be good at, is we will always find a way.
Caring about people makes it a hell of a lot easier to be patient because you realize that not being okay is not an option.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for tuning in if you did, and we'll chat to you next time.
Cool.
That was actually pretty good.